Hi folks, it's Andy. Welcome to this week's Kendo Rant. Okay, here we are for another great week of questions. We've got loads for you today, absolutely loads. So we'll be getting to those in just a moment. But before we do, don't forget, like, share, subscribe, you know, all the YouTube stuff. And most importantly, shop at KendoStar.com. KendoStar.com, of course, is the best, most amazingest, brilliantest, bestest Kendo website for Kendo equipment in the known universe. Of course, I would say that because I own the place. So, you know, don't take my word for it. I mean, you should take my word for it. But even if you don't want to take my word for it, you can check out our Trustpilot rating. You'll see we're one of the highest rated e-commerce websites online, not just in the Kendo sphere. Probably everyone in your dojo's using KendoStar by now. Like, probably has been for years at this point. Pretty sure we're the biggest one out there. But that's because we're the best. So get to KendoStar.com. Right. Okay, let's get to these questions, shall we? Good evening, Fish Sensei. I'm watching the mega stream you did at Kendo Tips. That was real fun. Go and watch that if you haven't watched it yet. I'll try and put a link in the description. It's like 5 hours almost. Where I did a live stream with Jose from Kendo Tips. It was super fun. Really had a great time. Your explanation about Shugyo made me reflect about something that's been in the back of my mind for a while now. I don't beat around the bush. I'm 50 years old. I just got Shodan and I try to practice twice a week. Sure. What do you think the reasonable goal to be attained would be? I understand this is very subjective and a personal thing, but your 2 cents on the matter would be greatly appreciated. I'm not getting any younger. So, look. It is very subjective, so it's not for me to say, obviously. But realistically, practicing twice a week, what are you like? You just got Shodan, you're 50. So, like, let's be honest. The great thing about Kendo is you can keep practicing it until you're elderly. The 8th Dan exam was held just the day before yesterday in Tokyo, and the eldest successful candidate was 75 years old. And that's, you know, most people pass 8th Dan when they're like 46 to 50 years old. And so, you know, anything's possible. Well, not anything, but, you know. So let's work this out, shall we? All right. So let's say you just got Shodan. So in a year's time, you'll be 51. You'll be looking at Nidan. After that, another 2 years to 53 for Sandan. That is a really achievable short-term goal. All right, Sandan is really achievable short-term goal. And I'll be honest, getting to Sandan in that time won't be easy. It will take a lot of time, and it might be more time and dedication than you might want to put into it. So it might even be fair to say before, you know, in the next 5 years, get to Sandan. Either way, I think that's fine. But following Sandan, you're then looking another 3 years to get to Yondan, another 4 years after that, sorry, to get to Godan. All right. So we're now looking sort of within the next 10 years, somewhere getting towards Godan, right? 10 to 12 years, probably. That still leaves you very, very capable and active. All right. I don't think it will be unacceptable for you to aim towards 6th Dan even, all right? And then we're just talking about Dan grades here, of course. There's other things as well. But, you know, there's no reason, like, say in 15 years' time, you know, you're at Godan, working towards sixth dan. That's a very respectable thing at that age, at 65, to be doing. That's not too old to be doing that at all. All right. So there's definitely, you know, a realistic path there, I think, in terms of grades. And even then, let's say you can make sixth dan before you're 70. You know, there's no reason why you'd give up on going towards seventh dan too, right? There's no reason you wouldn't need, you know, there's no reason you would have to stop that. Yeah, absolutely not. There's people in the 70s passing eighth dan, right? So I'm sure you could do it. So that's that. Look, you're not going to get on the national team and play in the World Championships. Let's be frank about that, of course. Yeah, sure, right? Doesn't mean that you should ignore Shiai or never do any Shiai though either. There's obviously that too. Are you going to be national champion? Probably not. Probably not, right? Does that mean that you should not care about trying to win any Shiai either? No, of course not. There's opportunities for Shiai, and maybe there are tournaments that you could do very well and even win. You know, especially sort of if there's senior categories or stuff like that, or like Sandan and below categories, there's no reason why you couldn't win that. And the reason I'm saying that is because the reason I'm saying that about like national champions or and I don't know what country you're in, but why I'm saying that about sort of national championships or world championships is because like the guys that win that, they're often young, like in their late 20s, early 30s, and they're already fifth or sixth dan. So in very high level places anyway. I'm talking like the World Championships anyway. You know, and it does depend on what country you're in. It depends if Kendo's not particularly popular in your country, then there's, you know, maybe you could go to your national team if you don't really have, you know, there's national teams out there that just need players. So it just depends. But like as a realistic idea of like winning matches, like you go to the Worlds, yeah, you're going to struggle. But that doesn't mean, you know, I definitely think that there's an excellent progression path for you in Kendo going forward. And I don't think that you being 50 years old and Shodan is in any way a hindrance or you being sort of a step back than anybody else. All right. So I think you just got to make of it what you can. And I'd encourage you to do so. Hello again, Fisher Sensei. I'm a reasonably tall guy, 190 centimeters, and I've issues striking Do properly. I think this is the same person that asked the last question, actually. I think these are two YouTube comments. Mainly from fear of hurting my partners. As a result, I rarely use it in Keiko, which understandably is not ideal in the long run. Notice I corrected that there. I'm being really nitpicky on a lot of this, but Keiko is the word. You only say geiko when it's attached to another word like jigeiko or kakari geiko, hatsugeiko, these sort of things. It's the way Japanese soften the K to a G when it's attached to another word. Are there any tricks to help practice door strikes in a precise and safe manner? Many thanks. So before I answer this, I'm going to apologise if I sound a little bit bunged up. All right, I've got a little bit of sort of congestion going on up here. I think it's I think one of my kids brought a bit of a cold home from school, and I think I've picked up on it. So yeah, apologies if I sound a little bit like Kermit the Frog. Right. It is hard hitting dawns, the sort of shorter people who are shorter than you are. It is difficult. There's two things you can do. One, you can bend your knees slightly, and two is you have to adjust your wrist position. Am I going to say something controversial? In general, door strike, the Kensen should be higher than the wrists or the hands in general. That's not always possible. It's just simply not always possible when you're hitting someone who's a lot shorter than you are, right? Because you can't crouch down like this either, right? But like, so you're almost kneeling on the floor to do it. The fact is, against really short people, do is not a super useful technique either. Let's be upfront about that, all right? So I wouldn't get too miffed about not being able to use it in Keiko either, because it is probably not a super useful waza for you at your height. At 192, when you've got, when you've got partners who are like 170, like 175-ish and above, then you might be able to figure out how to do it, how to sort of find that chance for it. But you're probably going to struggle on people shorter than that, because they're not going to come flying at your men. They're just not going to come flying at it. So like Kaishido and stuff isn't really going to be super useful technique for you, because they don't tend to throw themselves into men like that. Some people do, but I'm talking in general. So I wouldn't beat yourself up over it too much. Yeah. But when you're doing it in Kihon especially, bend your knees a bit, turn your wrists a little bit more, even if it means the shinai angle has to be a little bit flatter on those shorter people. Something's got to give, right? Right, next one. Hi Andy, a question for the next Kendo rant. Good. How come domine embroidery, shokko, tend to be plainer these days? Back in the day, there were a variety of colourful designs to choose from, but nowadays it seems a lot of retailers are mostly sticking to plainer dot style embroidery, rather than the kikko or kisanebishi style. I've never heard of kisanebishi, but okay. Styles of the past. Is this simply the fashion in Japan driving the change internationally? Yeah, it's exactly that. Probably about 15 years ago, a bit more now, maybe about 15 years ago. It's like, it's probably more, to be honest. Probably more than 15 years ago. I feel like 15 years ago was like 1995, but it's not. Like 15 years ago is like the mid 2000s, isn't it? So it's probably more. It's probably like 20 years ago. Those sort of door patterns became much less popular. That's when I think the style of Borga started to change rapidly, was in the sort of early 2000s, I guess. Early to mid 2000s. So yeah, about 20 years ago, where machine stitched Borga became much better. It started to become much more popular, much better. Borga became cheaper, and a fashion developed of the mendare started to get shorter. The Borga overall started to look sleeker rather than flamboyant. Before that, it was very big, very big, long mendare made you look very sort of very flamboyant. Like I say, very detailed patterns on the futon, very brightly coloured shokko, very intricate mune kazari designs. All these things, I think around they changed to be much more sort of streamlined, sleek, slick. And you plain domine dot stitching, and it just went out of fashion. It hasn't come back. Really hasn't come back. It might do, but I don't imagine it coming back in the near future, should we say? So it is that, and the reason, obviously, demand is what controls the supply, I guess. In the suppliers like us and lots of others, we stick to that now, because it's just the main sort of done thing. It's like the Kendo look these days. If it comes back in fashion, then maybe we'll start to offer more different ones, but I don't know. I don't imagine those sort of, those old school, like the yellow and red and the like purple and white hanabishi. I don't know if that's the same as kisanebishi. I've not heard of kisanebishi, but those sort of designs, and that kikko, you say the kikko, it's like, I remember that old one with the red, green, had green, like olive green, ugrisu they call it in Japanese, named after a little bird, with a white dot in the middle with yellow as well. So yeah, I don't know. It can all still be done. If somebody really wants it, we can still do it. No problem. No problem at all. All the patterns still there. I just don't see it coming back into fashion anytime soon though. Question for the channel. Choking up with the left hand when hitting door. Pros and cons depending on weather. Okay, so what you're talking about is when you hold the shinai, when you strike door, you bring the left closer to the right when you do the door strike. So the pros and cons. I do this a lot, actually. I like to do this, especially with Kaishido and Nukido. The pros of it, of course, is that you are adjusting the leverage point or the fulcrum of where the wrists are turning the shinai. So it does become easier to move the shinai in a sort of sharp angle for your kaishido, especially when you don't have much time to do it. It's much easier than wielding the shinai from the furthest point. You're sort of shortening the shinai in a way by doing it, so you're giving yourself a little bit of extra to do it. So it's particularly useful, I find, for, like I say, kaishido and nukido. The cons of it, of course, though, is you've got to be very careful not to let there's two things that often happen with it, is that you can use your right hand more than the left to make the strike. So it makes the strike less effective. And also lots of people often release the left hand before they've actually made the strike, and they make a one-handed door strike. So they're things you have to watch out for, definitely. And of course you can't hit the doors hard. You can't generate as much power, but the fact is with Nukido or Kaishido, you don't need to hit it that hard because you've got the momentum of the Aite. So I wouldn't necessarily think that that's a big deal. And for that reason, it does depend on the waza. So you wouldn't choke it up on like Hikido, for example, where you can't put your hips into Hikido. So you do need the power from the shinai, which you get by generating speed in the kensen, which means you have to swing the shinai from the furthest point from the kensen. That's where the fulcrum of the arc has to be, so that the most force gets generated in the tip of the shinai to make the strike powerful enough. You wouldn't do it with hikiwaza for that reason. Like if tobikomi do is like a thing, it's not often a thing, but I'd tend not to do it for that as well. But you could do, but I don't think it's so necessary. But I'd definitely say for kaishido and nukido, I find it much easier to bring the left hand up to the right, so that I've got that sort of shorter leverage point on the shinai. Okay, we've got a nice long one here. Let's have a look. Dear Sensei, I occasionally watch the Kyoto Taikai Hanshinobu to see what is considered exemplary kendo. When on the very rare occasion there's a clear ippon, the Hanshis tend to do a very slow Zanshin that, to an untrained eye, looks wide open. However, there's no counterattack to this. My understanding is that this is acceptable at that level because, one, both swordsmen are aware of the clear ippon, that it would be considered rude not to acknowledge the same. Two, even if the physical movement is slow, the striking Hanshi's mind is still on the partner, such as that a counterattack will not be successful. And at that level, the focus is more on whether the swordsman is mentally and emotionally moved rather than whether a strike has physically landed. Therefore, such Zanshin is appropriate for Hanshis. However, for us beginners, physically mimicking such Zanshin only leaves us open, and we are not at that level yet. Hence, it's important to physically negate, including blocking any counterattacks as part of Zanshin. Would you agree, or have I got this completely wrong? So I think you touch on some really good points. There, and I think that what you're talking about is, very much, very much a concern for a lot of people. I think we have a similar question a bit later on. So it is a paradox because we get told Zanshin, and I think Zanshin has got to be one of the most misunderstood concepts in Kendo, and it's hard because it is a difficult one to understand, and I get that. I do get that. So, how do I take this one? I think you raised some good points, and I think you are correct about some of it, all right? you have to first bear in mind the Kyoto Taikai is the Zen Nihon Kendo Enbu Taikai. All right, so it is a demonstration shiai. All right, and the Hanshinobu isn't even shiai; it's the demonstration tachiai. All right, so there's no ippon. Right, nobody calls the ippon. All right, it's demonstration. Right, first off. Secondly, Hanshi are senseis who have had Hachidan for at least 20 years. Right, that means that they're like at least in their 60s. All right, at least. So of course they're not going to do the fast sort of movements that you see from like even young nanadans who are in the 30s. Okay, that's the first thing. But I think what is more important is that I think both parties are often clearly aware of the clear datotsu strike. I don't know if it's that they consider it rude not to acknowledge. I don't think it's that. It's that it's more your 2 and 3, especially your 3. The focus is more on whether the swordsman is mentally, emotionally moved rather than the strike is physically landed. I think that's really a key part of it. I think if you look at the criteria for Yuko Datotsu, Zanshin is categorized into 2 parts there. Or the kamae, should I say. It's like migamae and kigamae. And I'm pretty sure they're sort of drawn out there under Zanshin. Let's have a look, because I happen to have the Shimpan Tebiki, which has the diagram in it. So, yeah, they are. I'm glad I remembered that correctly. So it's here. It says there, Zanshin, okay, kamae. And then it says there, migamae, kigamae, okay. And what that means is the kamae of the migamae, which one? That one, migamae, this one. This is the kamae of the body. And the kigamae is the kamae of the spirit. And I think what we tend to do is we place a lot of emphasis on the migamae, which is the kamae of the body. And in this case, it doesn't mean kamae as in chudan no kamae, jodan no kamae. It means the preparedness. It means the zanshin of the body. Yeah. So the movements of your body and how they are reacting to your partner. And we forget a little bit about the kigamae. And that's probably the more important one, especially at the higher levels. So when you watch these hanshi, they don't have, it's totally incorrect to say that they don't have zanshin. Like their zanshin is like exemplary. And even if it isn't necessarily manifested in the migamae, it's made up for and some in the kigamae. And that really emanates from their tachiai. And that's why there's 2 things. Is one is that when one of them receives a strike, those strikes are often at that level. They're the strikes that switch off the lights. You know what I mean? You get hit and you're like, oh. You couldn't respond if you wanted to, because you get caught at that point where you're like, oh, this way. So this kind of zanshin of the migamae, the kind of, this sort of thing, definitely isn't as necessary. And the senseis are expert enough to realize that at the point of the strike, I believe. All right. You're right in that us just copying it will not necessarily result in the best results, should I say. But I guess the answer to the question is, and we'll touch on it again a little bit later, because I think there's a similar question, is that there's as the levels go higher and higher. I'm only speculating here, of course, because I'm so far away from any of that. It's well above my pay grade. You know what I mean? I'm still a beginner. I don't mean that in like a sort of stupid, humble way, like sort of thing. It's not that. It's like the gap between look, let's be honest, right? The gap between 6th Dan and 7th Dan is like that. And the gap between the gap between 7th Dan and 8th Dan is like off the chart. Yeah. So where I'm at, which is like 6th Dan, and those Hansi 8th Dans, it's like it's like somewhere in space, yeah. But I think I recognize what I'm looking at, even if I can't necessarily, well, even if I'm a long, long way away from being able to understand it in practice. In that, I think that there's as that sort of level goes up, the balance between the Migamae and Kigamae shifts. I think that's overall Kendo as well in across the board. As you're a beginner, you only know about the Migamae, right? So all of your Zanshin is expressed via Migamae, by the physical act, physical movement. And as you increase in ability and level and understanding, then the balance tips more to, you know, in the direction of, I'll switch my phone off so notification doesn't come. So the balance comes more and more sort of between that Migamae and Kigamae. I think that's probably about where the level I'm at right now is. I think that's probably around the sort of Rokudan level is where it's sort of 50-50-ish. Yeah. And then probably it goes more this way in the favor of the kind of Kigamae. I think. Right, next one. Okay, right, what have we got? Hi Andy, thanks for the weekly rant. I would love to hear your thoughts on the following. I'm a 5th Dan teacher of a rather new dojo where the members are mainly kids and Kyushu adults, with a small bunch of Yudansha up to Nidan and Sandan. Cool. Although my short-term goal is to raise the overall level of the dojo, I wish to continue progress and prepare 6th Dan in the coming years. Apart from going to other dojo with higher grades people and attend seminars, would you have any tips regarding on what I can do in my dojo to do so? Focus on giving the best example possible when I teach, but I lack having people beat me up in Jigeko on a regular basis. Long live KendoStar. Yes. Your question is excellent. And I think it's something that a lot of people struggle with and are unsure of how to handle the situation. I'm in a similar one too. I'm in a similar situation as well. So, yes, going to the dojos, trying to practice with the other senseis, higher grade senseis, is massively important. You have to do that. However, you're very lucky. People like you and me are blessed in that we have an opportunity to work with our juniors. And by that, I mean that particularly your low Dan grades, Nidan, Sandan, in order to help you move forward with your seme. Okay. 6th Dan, you have to be able to influence your partner. Okay. You have to be able to make a move that elicits a reaction from the other side. And you have to have already put the steps in place in order to capitalize on that movement as well. Now, if you go to another dojo and you practice with 7th Dan or another 6th Dan, how often are you going to be able to do that with that person? Not very often is the answer, all right? Because they're better than you are. The more experienced than you are is probably the better way of phrasing that than better. But they're better at that than you are because they've got more experience. So it's not going to work, all right? It's not going to work. People say it to me all the time. You know, I've got 5th Dans in my dojo. They say to me all the time. They don't say all the time because they've already listened to the answer, but not just in my dojo, but I practice with people who are 4th and 5th Dan all the time. And they always say to me, oh, I'm trying to work on the seme. And you know, and I'll give them advice, and they say, "But it doesn't work on you." I was like, yeah, of course it doesn't work on me. Of course it doesn't work on me. If it did, then I shouldn't be the higher grade than you, right? That's the thing. And yet momentarily it might, you know, I'm not saying it will never work, but on the whole it won't. So you're going to struggle to practice what it is that you have to do, right? That's what you need to use your junior members for, your nidans, your sandans, all right? Because your seme will work on them. So you can train yourself into using them to learn or train your body and your mind into how to get this seme to effectively work. It's a bit like, I often use the analogy of a boxer and a punching bag. It's not very nice to talk about them as punching bags, and it's not that. Or people on the pads, the guys holding the pads. Sometimes they swing the pads at the boxer and they've got a duck and stuff like that. That's not the same as somebody really trying to knock their head off, right? It's not the same as that, but it is a kind of, the intensity is turned down a bit so that they can improve their ability for the real match. And that's the same way that you use those junior grades in your club, all right? You practice that. Make sure that when you're with them, and you don't just beat up on them either, obviously, but make sure that you are affecting them with the seme and getting them to strike. Even if you don't do a counter attack, sometimes let them strike you. Just see if you have made them to strike. They don't have to realize that's what happened. They probably won't, yeah. But see if you can get them to strike when you want them to strike. And then as you're able to do that, then do it and maybe use a Debano as on them as well. This is going to work better than if you were practicing with another fifth dan, all right? Then what you want to do is try and get to another fifth dan and try and practice with another person who's a similar level doing that as well, all right? And then with your senseis, try and find your senseis so that you can mix that in also. But in your daily grind at the dojo, that's what you need to be doing so that you know you're in the mindset of doing that, all right? And you've got these lower graded people who are there for you to use in a way to do that, all right? I know use isn't a great word, but that's the, you know, in this context, that's what I mean. And at the same time, of course, you've got to be a good dojo leader. You've got to be a good example for them and show them the best way. And you still got to, you know, bring the best out of them. But you do that at the same time. All right. So you are in a good position. All right. It's not a weak position that you're in. It feels like one, but it's not. All right. You're in a good setup for it. Next, following up about your rant about blocking, what are some of the ways you feel Kendo instruction in the West differs from in Japan? There's lots of ways. I think the teachings on Zanshin is one. Definitely. Definitely one. And that idea of Zanshin being, you know, a balance of Migamae and Kigamae. There's lots of other things as well. I think in the West or outside of Japan, there's a kind of stigma around Shiai or Shiai Kendo or competition Kendo. It doesn't seem to exist in Japan. You know, participating in Shiai is generally thought of as a good thing. Winning the matches is generally considered a good thing. Nobody talks, about sort of dodging and blocking and stuff like that so much. Yeah. And obviously the main thing is different, of course, is that like you don't have many adult beginners in Japan. So that's the main way that instruction is different, is because it's mainly done for kids. You don't get much instruction as an adult. Yeah. Because most adults are like 5th dan or above. So you go to a dojo and it's like an hour of jigeko and you go home. You know, you might get the odd hint from a sensei, but nothing major. They're not going to be standing there and dishing out a class so often, all right? There's exceptions, of course. In 2020, I bought the Kinjuri Shinai Kensei and I love them. Since then, they're no longer being sold. Is there a newer version coming out soon, or should I get the KendoStar Ultimate Model? Are there any differences between the Kensei and the all-purpose Shinai besides the Skagawa and the type of bamboo? No, there is similar type of Shinai. So we took the Kensei away because I felt that we didn't need 3 types of sort of practice Shinai. We've got the Gori Shinai on there, which are like a budget, not a budget, but like a kind of entry level practice all-purpose Shinai. And then the KS, the KendoStar Ultimate all-purpose one, is like a good all-rounder with decent bamboo. good, well balanced, well made shinai. And the Kensei is basically the same as the KendoStar Ultimate all-purpose shinai. It's basically the same. The difference was it came with a slightly nicer tsukagawa. Yeah. So if you still want the Kensei one, we can still get them if you fire us an email. But my advice would be just get the all-purpose shinai for the time being. The KendoStar one. I think you'll be just as happy with it because they're really, really great. We improved them a bit when we changed the Kinjurushi as well. We changed them up a little bit. I didn't make a big song and dance about it, but because we was kind of amalgamating those into the range, sort of into a single product. I think you'd be better off just going with the all-purpose the ultimate all-purpose one. I think you'll be really happy with it. It's our most popular shinai by far, and it's brilliant. To be honest, it's really good shinai. I love it. I use it all the time. And so do all our staff actually, pretty much. My question is, not like most kendoku are building up muscles over time. It's my understanding and knowledge far ahead of my physical ability. I found I was constantly using my left foot muscle. My left foot was so painful, especially left heel the next day, that I can't even walk. Okay, after practice. Okay. Oh, I remember this. This is a comment you left in the group. It was super duper long. I have read it. I read it and I appreciate the comment and the backstory. It's great. Thank you. But I've just taken the question part because we've only got a bit of time. So much time. I research everywhere. No one have the same problem as I do. Most people have heel pain from the right foot or wrist or shoulder pain. I bought an Achilles and calf compression supporter from KendoStar, of course. Thank you. Today, and hope it'll help. But I don't understand how others are coping with such heavy muscle usage on their left foot. Second question about dry and burger. Although I'm still 10 weeks away from my Sentinel, there's a product called a shoe dryer. I wonder if I can use it to dry kote. Lastly, I wrote about 3 reviews on Trustpilot, but not received loyalty points. But as not an important matter, just to let you know, many thanks. Okay, I'll talk about the Trustpilot thing in a minute. You should be getting loyalty points. Well, I'll get back to that. Okay, so the left leg thing. I recommend you let your sensei have a look at your kamae and see if it's in that for the start, but it might just be that you need to just build up a little bit more strength. I think the supporter will definitely help you, and just make sure you stretch properly and stretch your left leg and calf, particularly because Kendo does place a very big burden on your left leg and your left calf. So make sure you stretch it properly, and then after practice, stretch it again. All right. And I think that will definitely help. You could try icing it as well a little bit, and that might help. I'm not a doctor or anything, so I'm just guessing. But I definitely think stretching will definitely help. And like I say, have your sensei have a look at your kamae a little bit and see if there's an issue with the way you're placing your left leg. About the shoe dryer for your kote, yeah, sure, give it a try. I guess it'll work in theory. As long as I guess it's like a hair dryer that you put inside your shoes. I think I've seen those. That's the kind of idea. It should be fine as long as it doesn't get too hot. I wouldn't let it get too hot. But I don't think it'd be a major problem. And about your Trustpilot reviews. If you've not got any loyalty points from your Trustpilot review, send us an email. We'll get someone to have a look at it because you should be getting them. If you leave a review on Trustpilot, you should get given some points. The thing about Trustpilot though is that Trustpilot is a service review. All right. It's not a product review. And I know that's a little bit confusing and a lot of people mix that up. So when you place an order with us, when we ask you to review us on Trustpilot, we're asking you to review how you thought we did as a company rather than what did you think of our products. For the products, you get reward points for reviewing those as well, but you have to review them on the website. And because Trustpilot is a service review, if you order 3 products from us and then leave 3 Trustpilot reviews, it counts the same as doing 1 because it's one service action that we've delivered. So generally it only pays out on the first one, yeah, for the loyalty points. you can't just spam the Trustpilot reviews to kind of keep accruing the loyalty points. Yeah. We're doing our best to help everyone with these loyalty points, but you know, let's be fair to each other. All right. So if you're leaving Trustpilot reviews, but just bear in mind that the point of the Trustpilot review is for you to tell us how, and tell other people how KendoStar did in delivering your order, processing your order, dealing with your inquiries, and treating you as a customer. So leaving 3 of those serves the same purpose as leaving 1. If you want to review the products, then you need to go to the product page and leave a review on there. As long as you're logged in, you'll get reward points for those 2. Now, make sure as well you've actually got an account on our website. So if you don't have an account on our website, we can't give you points even if we wanted to. So, all right. So just make sure, send us an email if you haven't got any, mail@kendostar.com, and we'll sort it out. Okay. Right. Next one. Hi, Andy. I've been swinging incorrectly and my teachers have been helping me to address this issue over the last few weeks. The issue is that I'm unintentionally putting strength into my right hand. I'm right-handed. I know you said most recently in a video that sometimes teachers in Japan, I'm in Japan, say this when they're unsure of what else to say, but I can definitely confirm it's the case and is the actual problem. Fine. It is for a lot of people. During practice last weekend, one of my instructors finally explained it to me in a way that made sense, and it seems that I can swing correctly now, and it leads to my actual question. Cool. When swinging properly, I've noticed that the shinai feels quite a bit heavier in my left hand compared to when I was swinging it incorrectly. Yeah. In your opinion, would it be beneficial to try and build muscle in my arms to assist with that? I think I heard somewhere that building muscle isn't a good idea with Kendo. I have a 30 Magnum. It's pretty heavy. My plan is to just swing that around every day otherwise. If not weights, maybe that will be enough. I don't think you need to build strength like hitting weights and stuff like that in this regard. I think what you'd be better doing is just doing suburi. If you just do suburi and focus on it, you'll develop the strength that you need in the right places as you get better at doing so. All right, so do it with a shinai. Try with your furisen as well. But if you can, do with the shinai in the beginning and get used to doing it that way. I wouldn't start hitting weights to do it because you might end up building it in the wrong place, and you know, but it's normal. What you're saying is normal. Part of the reason that we default to using our right hand in swinging the shinai is because the shinai feels heavier in the left. So yeah, my advice is just crack out some suburi, okay? Hi Andy, I understand Kendo is about the discipline of the human character through the principles of the sword, but I wondered if you have any opinions on how the principles of the sword edit the principles of Kendo, as I know you prefer not to compare Kendo to using an actual sword. Well, no, I mean, it's still the principles of the sword, isn't it? But my point is it's the principles rather than the actual techniques is what Kendo is. Anyway, may be uniquely suited to this development as opposed to other activities and pursuits. In other words, what specific aspects of Kendo do you believe are useful for improving character? And do you think there are any exclusive to the practice of Kendo? Apologies if the question's been asked before, or if it's obvious. I love the videos and thanks for the content. Keep up the great work. Thank you very much. So what you're basically asking is as Kendo is there for us to improve our character, is that unique to Kendo, or are there aspects of Kendo that are unique in doing that? I think that's a really good question. And I don't know the answer because I don't really practice other sports. But I would be very surprised if Kendo is particularly unique in its ability to help us develop as better people. In fact, I'm sure it's not. Surely not. Right? Surely not. Whether there's things that are unique to Kendo for doing that, probably not either. I'm sure that, you know, the things that a lot of the things that really do build character in Kendo are things like overcoming the really difficult times, going to Kendo when you don't want to, accepting defeat when you don't want to, challenging yourself when you don't want to put yourself up against the possibility of losing or failing. And that doesn't necessarily mean in an event. It could be you don't want, actually going for the shinsa when you're scared to fail, going for the shiai when you're scared to lose. But it can also be when you're stood against the other person and going for the strike when you're, and overcoming the fear of receiving a counter strike. Or carrying on when you don't want to, when it's horrible kakarieko or loads of kirikaishi and you want to quit and you want to stop and rest and just keep pushing through. These are all things that contribute, right, to that development of character that Kendo gives us. Surely it can't be unique to Kendo, though. Surely not. And I think that there's a little bit of elitism in Kendo that I don't particularly like. When we say Kendo's not like other sports. Kendo's not just a sport. Because I think sport has probably got, other sports do have probably as much to offer as Kendo does. Albeit perhaps in different ways or through different channels. Do I think Kendo is special? Well, yeah, I do, because it's special to me. Is it objectively special compared to other sports? Probably not. Or activities, I should say, before someone gets triggered by me saying the word sport in the same sentence as Kendo. But, it's hard to me. It's hard for me to imagine that an Olympian or a world class athlete or I wouldn't know how to say it, but like a top ranked ballerina or even a very accomplished musician has somehow, walked an easier path. Yeah. Than we do as Kendoka. I don't think that that's appropriate. And I don't think that would be fair either. And it's easy to say, well, look at these top footballers. They're not exactly the example of great people or something like that. But, Kendo's got its share of questionable characters, shall we say, all right? The goal of character development isn't always successful. So I think Kendo is unique in the way that it calls it out as its intended purpose. Because Kendo had to become that for it to be what it is, in order for it to graduate or evolve from being simply a method of taking life, which is originally what it was. And of course, it could have gone in the other way. It could have gone into a more sportified direction, but it didn't. And I think that's good. I do. I like the way Kendo is. Even if it's often misinterpreted by members of the sort of Kendo community to be more separate from a sport than it truly is. All right. I'm not saying Kendo is a sport, but I'm also not saying it's not. And it's arrogant and elitist to pretend that that Kendo at least doesn't share many aspects with many other sporting activities that are happy to call themselves sports, even if Kendo's not. Right, moving on. Right, I've got some proper glare on this camera, haven't I? Let me shut that door so I can get rid of it. Coming back in a sec. Okay, next question. How are we doing here? We've got a few more to go. Okay, let's pick up the pace here, okay? I know we've been here for quite a while. I very much enjoyed your extended rant on Kendo tips. Thank you. I was interested to hear the concepts behind the different KendoStar product lines as a backstory as your company as a whole. Thank you. That's something we talked about in the stream with Kendo tips last week. You mentioned that Praetor is your baby. We didn't talk about it much. Could you please elaborate? Thanks. Yeah, so I didn't talk about the Praetor set all that much because we were talking a lot about the Myrmidon set, because that's the set that we sent over to Jose for him to try out and have a look at. So we were talking mainly about that. But the Praetor is like our kind of, at the moment, sort of highest grade of the Vanguard series. I basically... I took our original Vanguard model, it's like our flagship model, and I love the design of that. Obviously, I designed it to be the kind of best all-round Borger, and I kind of just boosted all the materials, just made it in the best way we possibly could, so it's all fully deer skin, all that sort of thing. And I made it's my baby because I made it after I passed my grading for 6th Dan. I was like, right, I'm gonna make my perfect Borger, and I sat down and I made no limitations, not having to worry about, you know, oh, it has to be affordable for everybody, or it has to be, you know, easily accessible for beginners and stuff like that. Praetor's not necessarily meant for that. It was just me sitting down and just not really caring so much about it as to be a product, but just to be the best Borger I could make for myself that I would like to have. So if there's anything like a signature model, an Andy Fisher's signature model, which sometimes people ask me about, it's the Praetor. And then when I got it, I loved it so much. I was like, yeah, I can't keep this a secret. So, so we put it on KendoStar as a product. So that's basically it. It's such an amazing book. I love it so much. Hi there, Fisher Sensei. One problem I keep having done this for 3 years is balance. Often during Keiko, when I follow through after a while, I keep having to adjust my feet slightly to regain good kamae upon turning around and facing my partner. Else I feel my centre of gravity veers off and stifles my ability to strike at a given moment, as I need to readjust and repair my kamae first. Will I get better at this with practice, so do you reckon I've got a specific bad habit I need to constantly consciously iron out? Thanks. You'll get better at it with practice. Try to make your feet a little bit wider. Keep your left heel off the floor. And make sure that you've always got some energy stored up in your left leg, and concentrate on your kamae. And if you're in keiko, when you say keiko, if you mean jigeko, don't run past your partner. Don't run past your partner. Why would you do that? Don't take your eyes off them, all right? Try to keep it. Watch my video on Zanshin. Tell you all about it, right? But it'll get better with time. It will, with practice. I'm sure of it. Hi Andy, is Kijido as durable as synthetic door, or people buy them just for wearing occasionally only? I do understand that bamboo door is more protective, but how much more heavier is it than synthetic? Thanks in advance. Kijido is not as durable as a synthetic door, and no bamboo door is as durable as a synthetic door. And especially a Kijido. A Kijido is a door that has not been lacquered, so you've got just plain rawhide on the surface. They're not like so delicate that you should only wear them occasionally. But what you have to understand is as you use them, they'll pick up scuffs, marks, and abrasions from your kendogi as well. My Kijido, I've got a couple now actually. But my sort of original Kijido is a present from my father-in-law. Many years ago. I used it an awful lot because I absolutely love it. And it's very sentimental to me. It doesn't look like the day we bought it. The day we bought it was bright yellow, beautiful, no marks on it now. It's kind of all stained from Aizome, from my kendogi, because that will happen because it's just a piece of rawhide. Obviously, it's got scuffs and marks. It's obviously years old, so you're starting to see the lines from the bamboo underneath. But all these things I consider sort of features of the door rather than defects. You know, it's like kind of, it gives it real character. So I really like it. In terms of protection, bamboo door aren't particularly more protective than synthetic ones, to be honest, especially if you get the 50-piece type synthetic one. Maybe a little bit, but not so much. It's not a noticeable amount, certainly not. Kijido isn't massively heavier than a synthetic one, but once you start getting into lacquered door, then they're quite a bit heavier. I wouldn't say it's massively noticeable though, unless you get into like the really expensive like same, that's the ray skin ones, or the shark skin ones. It's not a shark, it's a ray skin. Shark skin doesn't look like that. Just a spoiler alert. But the ray skin ones, they're really heavy, actually, really very heavy. But a bamboo door is for style at the end of the day. That's the main thing about a bamboo door, it's for style. So if you really want one, you won't notice it that much. Hi, Sensei, I enjoyed watching the Hachidan tournament Ippons, and I felt to me that the Zanshin general etiquette looked quite relaxed. Is this the nature of the Hachidan competition, more relaxed, or is this because they're all Hachidan Sensei, or is it like because it's the 80s? Is basically the. So this is from a post that I put on the blog a couple of days ago from like I think it was from 1987 or something, like an old Hachidan type guy. And yeah, it doesn't look like the All Japan Championships. It doesn't even look like the modern 8th Dan tournament. But I think it's a different, it's not the same 8th Dan tournament to what's happening now. The current one, they're all young 8th Dans in it. They're all like 50-ish. Some of them are like 40, 46, 47. And I can tell from that video, they're probably a bit older than that. But I think it all comes down to, what we talked about earlier about that Zanshin being more about the kigamae than the migamae. The spirit, the Zanshin of the spirit rather than just of the physical. And you can see it in that, like when one of those senseis gets hit by their partner, they're not like suddenly trying to make a counterattack or atouchi. It's like, they have to recognize that. Yeah. So this kind of not over the top, but the senseis making the strike, they don't need to oversell it either in a physical sense, because their spiritual Zanshin, their kigamae is like this, right? That's what I really think on that, to be honest. And of course, yeah, I mean, it is a bit different because it's the 80s. It has changed a lot in the last 30 years or so, 40 years or so. So, I would keep that in mind too. I would like to rant about ranking and if it's necessary as it needs to be. Would you prefer it becomes a practice similar to how fencing does their training? I've got no idea how fencing does anything, to be honest. I know nothing about fencing, literally zero, other than they wear white stuff, they wear white clothes. The mask is like it looks like it's not like the Kendo mask, it's like a, mesh. And their swords, they use a one-handed, like, rapier type sword. Looks cool, but I don't know anything about how they do their ranking and stuff. Is ranking necessary? Yeah, ranking's necessary, as it needs to be. Yeah, it is. I've talked about this before, actually. It's one of the key pillars of Kendo. You have to attempt to pursue the next rank, the next downgrade, if you want to improve at Kendo. It's there for a reason. It's a necessary step on the ladder, and it's not there for you to acquire status. It's there as a wall for you to climb over, even if you don't want to, all right? Even if you don't want to face that wall. And lots of us don't, because we don't want to fail. But you stagnate and you stay where you are. And that's the fact of it. You do. And there's nobody that's been, I don't know, Nidan or something for 20 years that is doing Kendo like someone who's Rokudan or Nanadan or Godan or Yondan. They're doing Kendo like a Nidan. And they're not getting any better. So, yeah, you have to do it. You have to do it. Or you're just staying where you are. And that isn't the point of what Kendo is it? It's supposed to be walking down the road, not staying in the same place. And that can be difficult. Doesn't mean you have to pass the grade, but you have to at least try it and pass it. Work towards improving so that you can pass it. There's, most people, a lot of people stop grading. It's not quite as applicable in the same way later on. If you get to Godan, it can be really hard to get over the next steps. But I still think it's really important that they have to start pushing. You still have to push. In Japan, it's different a little bit because, and I'm talking at the Godan level here, there's no one in Japan that's like been third dan for 20 years and they're like doing Kendo like an Anadan. There isn't. right? There's the odd Godan there though that's like really, really, really good. They just don't do any gradings because for a couple of reasons. One being that you have to usually you often have to travel quite a long way and spend a lot of money to do a grading for 6th Dan because it has to be a ZNKR grade and you can't do it locally. So it could be that. But this, you know, it's quite rare. And it doesn't happen outside of Japan, in my experience, to be honest. I've never seen someone who's been 5th Dan for a long time and they're like, and when I say a long time, like 10, 15 years, and they're like, oh yeah, this guy could easily, or this person could easily pass 6th Dan or even 7th Dan, just haven't, because they haven't bothered to grade that. If they could, they would do it. They would do it. Let's be honest, right? Most people don't do the grades because they know that they might fail and they're scared to fail. All right, and it's a rational fear. It's not nice to fail. It doesn't feel nice to face failure. But overcoming that fear is what Kendo is, as I alluded to earlier. Next one, hi Andy Sensei, what's your approach to teaching young children? Oh, you're going to like this. I understand that in Japan, Kendo is not meant to be fun and needs to be practiced seriously as a way of developing one's character, but such a concept might be hard for some children to grasp. What's your view on the fun aspect of Kendo, especially for children? Do you try to make the training experience more enjoyable or fun? Thanks. I don't teach young children in my dojo. That might be the answer to your question. I used to teach young children in Japan. I used to teach them from the age of 5 or 6. And I was involved all the way up to them being about 18. No, it wasn't supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be serious. So yeah, I don't think that lends itself to the Western mindset for raising kids, in my experience so far. I think kids want to do Kendo for fun. And I think if you want to teach younger kids Kendo, and let's slightly caveat it as I'm not counting young kids who are sort of either children of Japanese parents. Well, let's say children of Japanese parents. That might be a slightly different situation. But if we're not talking about that, then yeah, you're going to have to come up with a way that's going to keep them interested, keep them fun, keep them entertained. And I'm not very good at that. I don't approach Kendo in that way. I'm afraid. So it's difficult. But this is the reason I don't teach young children. All right, because I think Kendo it's difficult. It's difficult. It's really difficult. But I don't think I don't know. I don't think I have the patience for it. Let's put it that way. for changing the format of Kendo instruction to make it into a game or children's entertainment. I think there's other people who are very, very skilled at that. And if you are skilled at doing that, then that's probably the best way to get kids involved. And, you know, you might even get lucky and you might find a kid that's really interested in Kendo for Kendo and not just because it's like fun, like Star Wars cosplay. If you find that, then they might go on to be okay and pretty good, even if they do really like it. But I think you might. I don't imagine there's a massive difference between the end result from taking a kid from being 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 and a kid that's 14, 15 and probably a little bit more able to tolerate the Kendo as Budo rather than as a bit of fun. I don't know. I've got juniors in my dojo. But I don't take them until the 14. Okay. Hello, Andy Sensei. Our dojo recently participated in Shiai and we did well, but not as good as we wanted. We all had a grading coming up the next few weeks as well. What's a good way to mentally prepare for that and let go of our feelings from the Shiai? Also, what's something I can do to help me launch from my left foot better? And final, what would you recommend is the best way to learn Japanese? Thank you for your feedback. Great. Okay. So what you're talking about is obviously you did the Shiai, you did well, but not as good as you wanted. That will happen at 99% of the Shiai that you go to, all right? At night, unless you find yourself in a position where you are in a big fish in a small pond, which happens to a lot of people in small ponds. Happened to me, all right? Where years ago when I was young, where there's not a great deal of there's not a large pool of shiaisha who are able to compete with you. And then, yeah, you do expect to kind of get high results. But that doesn't happen very often. So for the most part, that's normal, okay? I don't think you need to let go of your feelings from the Shiai. I think it's good. Use them. Say, okay, that didn't go how we wanted. Let's do better next time. Let's work on it. Let's go forward to our grading. Let's all smash the gradings and then we can move on to the next thing. All right. And if that doesn't go well, then use that. Don't forget about it. Don't let go of it. I think you have to keep it. All right. I think you have to use it to motivate you to properly improve going forward. All right. Launching from your left foot better. Very difficult. You have to concentrate on it all of the time. And you can particularly improve it in suburi, okay? So when you're doing suburi, make sure, really concentrate on that you're pushing from the left each time you step forward. Push from the left, really step forward from the left, all right? But the only thing you can, the only thing you can really do is really just make sure you're concentrating on that and practice it and it will get better, all right? And the best way to learn Japanese, that's a good question. I didn't learn it in a conventional way, so because I learned it by moving to Japan. I knew some basics, and then I moved over to Japan. But I think it depends. I think everybody probably finds an efficient way different. But the best way is by speaking it. All right, and hearing it. You can study, but the amount of people I've seen that have studied and they know 50,000 kanji and they know all these grammatical ways and they've got the what is it, the JLPT level 2, which seems to be the thing. They've got that. I've got the level 2 as it happens, but I only just scraped the exam, if I'm honest with you, and I only got it because I thought I'd need it for a job, and I ended up not, so didn't even need to do it. But they've got all this stuff, and they look very, very, they've got a degree in Japanese or something like that, and you take them into Japan, and suddenly they're actually really struggling to communicate. I think the best way to learn Japanese is find stuff you're interested in. Particularly, I learned a lot of Japanese from music. Right, I like a specific genre of music that I happen to have a band that I really like, and I listened to their songs a lot, and looked up what the lyrics meant. Because music lyrics, this is just my opinion. Like with lots of songs, it's the same in English, isn't it? Lots of words repeat themselves. Do you know what I mean? Like how many songs have got like the word love or hurt or me, you, or today, tomorrow. These things are in they're in songs, right? And it's easy to remember because you like the song, right? So that helped me. I learned to read Japanese a lot by reading people's zekken. That helped me a lot. And yeah, I'd try and find yourself a community, like a Japanese language speaking community, and try and make some friends that you can actually talk Japanese with. some people who are willing to help you learn. Yeah, obviously that's really easy to do in Japan, but in the West, I don't know. Yeah, but speaking it, listening to it is what worked for me, and remembering. Yeah, ask, what does this mean? What does that mean? How do I say this? How do I say that? Once you can say that, then you can learn Japanese. Yeah, if you learn how to say those things, what's this? What's that? How do you say this? What does that mean? Can you say that again? Could you say it slowly? Yeah. Once you figure those how to say those, you could actually learn Japanese pretty quickly. All right. And there we go. There we go. We're done. That was a mega one, wasn't it? That was a long one. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for staying all the way to the end. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, shop at KendoStar, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.